Hi, everybody. Welcome to our continuing series on Indian weddings. And I'm here today with Chandani of Events by Sea, and she's here to tell us some important budget tips for Indian weddings. As we all know, Indian weddings are large, not just in the number of people we invite, but the number of things that we try to do as part of the Indian weekend. And Chandani is here to tell us about hundreds of weddings that she's been through and some things she's learned along the way that can help you keep to your budget while still keeping your Indian traditions and keeping your style alive as part of your wedding. So thanks for joining us, Chandani.
Thanks so much for having me again.
Yeah, let's jump right in. Let's talk about mandaps on a budget. A mandap can often be 5-10% of a budget if you want to get crazy. And they also are a very critical piece of the experience. It's the first thing usually that your guests see. And so we'd love to hear any thoughts or tips you have on doing a mandap on a budget.
Absolutely. So to stay within a budget for a mandap, I would say a fabric mandap is probably going to be more cost effective than a structured mandap. The reason being that there's a lot of labor involved with the actual structural pieces, bringing them in and out of the venue, transporting them, all of that. Whereas with a fabric mandap, there's a little bit less involved depending on the design that you get. So I think that would definitely be the first tip, is to stick with that if you do want to stay a little bit on a budget. The other thing is that really with decor in general, and especially with the mandap, the biggest cost kind of ends up being fresh flowers. So if we do want to keep the cost low to minimize on fresh flowers, the other thing that you can potentially do, depending on the decorator or the florist that you're working with, is maybe do a mix of silk and fresh flowers for the mandap. In all honesty, the mandap isn't something that guests are gonna, go and feel and touch. So if some of the flowers are silk, they're honestly not even going to know. If it is something like a centerpiece, I recommend doing fresh because it's right in front of them and they can touch it and feel it. But I don't think there's anything wrong with having some silk flowers on the mandap, and maybe even mixing it with some fresh flowers.
Okay, that's super helpful. Let's talk about table decor. A lot of brides will have 20, sometimes 30, 40 tables. Thoughts on how to make table decor scalable and on a budget?
Yeah, again, fresh flowers are really the biggest cost driver when it comes to the table decorations. So usually if you do have several tables, if you have 30, 40 tables, I always recommend doing 2 or 3 different types of centerpieces. So maybe if you're doing 3, one of those 3 is floral, is a floral centerpiece, and the other ones could be lanterns similar to this. It could be a candelabra. It could be a trio of different height, vases that have candles in them. Maybe they even have a submerged flower in them, things like that. So I think having that variation, one, it makes the room look really nice and gives some depth and dimension to the entire ballroom. But also it does help save some money because now you're not getting 40 big floral centerpieces. Maybe you're only getting 10 of them.
That's great. And you can really even that out by having candles on just a few tables. But
Yeah.
that rule of 3 of having 3 designs and divvying it up is a great way to spread out costs. Appreciate that. Let's talk about doing favors on a budget. Favors are often something that brides waver on whether or not they should get, especially if they have larger weddings. Any ideas on how they could save money while still giving out favors?
Yeah, absolutely. So with favors, I think people really enjoy things that are edible. So something like this, where you're getting this beautiful kind of box to put the some sort of favor in, but then you're getting candies or something like that. That's not too expensive to actually put in there. I think it's something that people really enjoy at the wedding itself, and it's something nice to take home as well. Also, favors that double as something else have been really popular. I would say I've seen like little elephant favors where you can actually stick an escort card in them. So it doubles for the escort card table, and then it also is a favor for them to take home. So that helps save money because now you're not worrying about 2 different separate costs. It's all kind of combined into one.
That's great advice. This elephant is actually a great example of a cheap and easy way to get a favor out there. It's got a bit of an Indian element. And then I also joke, it's a great way to keep the mother-in-law and aunties busy by having them fill it with candy. because that way
Yeah.
they can give them something to do as opposed to wondering what else they can do. So go ahead
Right.
and
And
fill
the
up
kids.
300 of them with your favorite candles. That's great. Let's talk about the gift bag. A lot of Indian weddings, a lot of folks are traveling, so they'll consider gift bags either at the hotel or on the day of. Any thoughts on how to do that on a budget?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely a nice gesture. And I think with Indian weddings, there's always that sense of hospitality. So it's something that we're always going to do, regardless of whether we're on a budget or not. I think having the basics in there is definitely important, in terms of having some water in there, maybe some painkillers, doing maybe one sweet snack, like a candy or something of that sort, maybe one savory snack, like chips or crackers, something just to kind of keep everyone in between events, keep them happy and full. Other than that, this depends on the budget. If people do want to add in kind of some more personalized things, we've definitely seen that, like kind of like door hangers that say, do not disturb, recovering from so-and-so's wedding, cute little elements like that. But it just really depends how much they want to invest in the bags. But I think definitely if you're on a budget, just having the basics, things that are a little harder to access at a hotel, like bottles of water, things like that would be important to have.
That's great. Great ideas. And lastly, let's talk about using candles. How can a bride think about using candles on a budget, either to save money buying candles or having them replace other design elements of a wedding?
So candles are fairly inexpensive, especially if we're comparing them to florals. So you can have a lot of candles, even just like this image where we have trees that have candles in them, and we have, candles going across the table as well. That is going to be costing much less than having florals, kind of going all the way across that table. Usually if you're working with a decorator, then they have the candles and it's not too expensive. I think it's just a little easier to let them handle it. If you prefer to DIY it, of course, you can go to like Hobby Lobby or Michael's or whatever you have in your area to get a bunch of those candles and have them set up. If it is a hotel wedding, typically they do provide a fair amount of votives to go on the table as well. But it just depends kind of what you want to do with it. One thing with candles to keep in mind is that most indoor venues, the flame has to be enclosed within the glass, which you will see in these pictures. You don't really see the flame going above the glass. So that's just something to keep in mind too in terms of safety when you're using candles.
That's great advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I really want to thank you for spending the time sharing your budget tips for Indian weddings. And if anyone has additional questions, you can reach Chandani at Events by C, and she'd be more than willing to answer any of your questions you might have. You can reach her on Facebook, on Instagram, or through our website. Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me again.